Alright guys, TacticalRab, hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Many of the OpTic legends getting nominated for a serious award last night in the esports world. The player of the decade. Many of the COD boys got nominated for this, largely from the Dynasty team. But who should actually win this award? One of the COD guys certainly should be in serious conversations. Is it going to be who you think who actually wins this award? aBeZy also talking about how long he intends to stay around competitive Call of Duty competing. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Drazah's looking for Chals. We talked earlier today, of course, Dashy among others, Dashy, HyDra and all this, playing a fair bit of Counter-Strike going into the World Championship, but Drazah's like, look, don't play CS 10-mans, like, let's get some Chals running up. So Drazah says, CleanX and Kremp at Dashy at TJ. But as we saw earlier today, of course, there were plenty of people talking about grinding CS, Kleister, Dashy, etc. So Kremp's like, look, is Twitter still broken, Drazah? Like, have you not seen the tweets? Everyone's either playing NBA 2K or they're playing CS. So good luck getting any sort of chal right now. It doesn't seem like this really happened. At least there was nothing publicly between the pair of them. There was a lot of talk as well about aBeZy. So aBeZy, Cellium, they've been killing it with the content over the last few weeks. It's been great to see aBeZy leveling up the content game. I know that Shotzzy's done a great job with it as well. Just to see that progress, really, that those guys have made on the content side, because I think the thing with FaZe has been for years is that, okay, great, they put in the work, they win championships, they execute, but they've not maybe done as much with their personalities as they could have done, and I think it's to some degree affected how they're perceived by the community and, the legacy that they've left, stuff like this. But it's not like those guys don't have entertaining personalities if they want to bring them out there. I think certainly aBeZy and Cellium that is true for. And we're seeing a bit of that over the last couple of months, really, and it is great to get some more behind-the-scenes content. Now, aBeZy did a bit of a vlog, actually, and I'll share this clip for you guys in a second. He talked about his future in COD, when he may or may not be looking to call it a day. Because the reason why I shared that just clip there of Attach is because I remember Attach 2 to 3 years ago, he was commonly saying on stream that he thinks he's got 2 to 3 years left before he's going to retire. And he was saying that in 2022, 2023, that Attach was thinking, okay, you know what, I'm still enjoying this, it's still working out for me, but more than likely, I've got maybe 2 to 3 seasons left, and then I'm going to call it a day. This most recent season was, kind of like the third season since he started to say that. And even though, maybe Attach could have come back, and look, who knows, if Black Ops 7 is amazing, Attach might consider it. And would he have the connections to still make it happen? Quite possibly. But Attach said for a good few years and seasons at this point that his career was likely going to be coming to a close around about now. And that's what we ended up seeing, right? Attach just called it a day, going to do some content stuff. I'm sure that he's got a very bright future ahead of him as well as, whatever he goes on to do. But you do get this occasionally. Now, of course, for Scump, it was a little bit different because it always concerns me when players start to talk about retirement. Not in aBeZy's case, really, but when players start to talk about, well, I'll give it a couple more seasons, because Scump did this, didn't he? He came into that Modern Warfare 2 season and said, look, this is it. This is my last year. It's the final push for me and the team to try and win champs again or win events again this season, and then I'm going to call it a day at the end of the year. But of course, for Scump, retirement was definitely on his mind, and he was kind of prepared to do so then and there. And a few months later, well, a couple of months later, when the team completely collapsed and Dashy was gone and there was all the drama, Scump just, said, screw this, I'm just going to call it a day early. Very controversial, but, it was probably the right decision at the time, and it went on to yield great success for the Green Wall because it helped them build a team that they eventually built for the following season to go on to win the World Championship. And by Scump staying around and not retiring immediately, Shotzzy stayed rather than going to FaZe. That was a big deal. So when players start to talk about when they're considering calling it a day, it's always a bit of a concern, maybe, but it's not like aBeZy saying, well, maybe next year, maybe the year after. aBeZy's talking about plenty of years down the horizon. He says that he, intends to compete until he's 30. When he's 30, wants to retire, wants to call it a day.
Obviously, I'm getting, older and don't want to retire till I'm like 30, if I'm being honest. So I want to keep doing it, but I think, putting more content out there, growing my brand a little bit for the future is like a good thing. So that's why I kind of wanted to start doing things now and getting it out there. And by the time I'm 30, maybe I can switch to full-time content.
So aBeZy is currently 25. He turns 26 in November this year. So he still potentially has, on this hypothetical timeline, another like 5 seasons to go. Now, aBeZy's been around a long while. He started out really in World War II. That was kind of his breakout game. If you guys remember watching back then in ranked play, he literally had an account called aBeZy and then an account called like aBeZy_aBeZy2 or whatever his second account was called. Both of them were number 1, number 2 on the ladder. Like, this guy got noticed effectively in that way, and he played at the end of the season competitively on Enigma 6. And then the following year, when they came around to E United, eventually he got the opportunity there in BO4, and then the rest is history. Since then, he's been alongside Simp ever since at that team. But there have been a couple of seasons now. His search again, like his search, his first bloods, like always amazing. But I will say this season, his respawn, like his hardpoint, has not been great. And, you know, it is a bit of a trend. I don't know if, you know, how much aBeZy's exactly in love with this game. Like, it happened a few games ago. You guys might remember it was with Vanguard when aBeZy had a really difficult year. And he said after the season that, like, yeah, I just didn't like that game at all. And I just wasn't able to be the player that I know I can be on that game. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of that in this recent title, because aBeZy has, you know, he's still been good, potentially even very good. But he has been the weakest player on that FaZe team this season. I don't think there's too much denying that. But it's not like aBeZy is going to go anywhere from the CDL. The question, I guess, over this 5-year span that aBeZy gives until the end of his competitive COD career is, how much more is he going to win over that period? And also, is he going to play with Simp the whole time? Because Simp's a little bit younger. So, you know, there is the possibility there of Simp staying around even longer, right? Like, if Simp competes until he's 30, you know, that's another, like, 7 years or whatever. Simp's actually just turned 24. He turned 24 back in February. So, anyway, these are Simp's numbers on the season just by way of comparison. But still, like, what's going to happen with aBeZy's future? And is he going to play with Simp the whole time? Because they've played together since 2019. I mean, are they going to play together for a decade? Like, possibly, but who knows what happens over the next couple of years. The money situation could dramatically change things at FaZe and at some other franchises as well. But speaking of these guys, especially Simp, there were some nominations coming through there as well, especially when it comes to these individuals. So the Esports Awards yesterday, they are coming up like on their 10th year, I suppose, of doing this. It seems to be what's happening anyway in their, yeah, here we go, a decade of Esports Awards coming up on, well, looks like that was yesterday. And they did some nominations for multiple different categories here. And the voting is going to close in August, and then, you know, they're going to go through with that one. But they're effectively celebrating 10 years of the Esports Awards, 10 years of esports, whatever you want to say. And they've put together their nominations for Esports Controller Player of the Decade. Now, you know, this is quite the assessment. Controller Player of the Year, that's one thing, and many of these guys have won it. But, you know, Controller Player of the Decade is a rather different story. And we have some serious nominations here, right? Like, there are plenty of COD players on the list, and it makes a fair bit of sense, because even if you're considering the last 10 years, Scump has not played for a couple of those, but he played at such a high level during most of those that absolutely you could make the arguments. Now, of course, you can make the argument about other individuals as well. Sonic Fox, you know, Hungry Box here from Liquid, Imperial Hal maybe, and a couple of others. But, of course, on this channel, we're going to be biased. And I think for good reason, really. I mean, you look at the list, they've got 10, was it 11 nominations, actually? Yeah, they've got 11 nominations, and 5 of them are, I mean, Call of Duty. And even you can, you know, potentially throw Snakebite in there as well, because he's from the Halo side, and obviously that aligns with Formula and Shotzzy as well to some degree too. You know, Scump, you can argue, is it Scump? Depends which way you look at it, because we're going to see Nadeshot in a second. Because Nadeshot got hooked up for the Esports Personality of the Year, or the Decade, sorry, nomination. So here he is, you know, with Faker, with eBay, Scump is here as well, Simple, Tarek, Hex, I mean, Cadrel, you know, some big names on this list. But Nadeshot got nominated for that, not as, you know, Player of the Decade precisely, but something not, you know, too far away. But as Nadeshot says, look, it's been a pleasure, good to be nominated. But, you know, eBay and Faker, my wife just said, better luck next decade, honey, and she's packing me a suitcase. Can I stay with y'all for a while? You know, Scump, Hex, and Tarek, of course, all part of OpTic, those guys. Tarek was on OpTic on the CS team back in the day. But, yeah, these are the nominations on the Esports Personality of the Decade. But an Esports Controller Player of the Decade, of course, these are the nominations. And, look, you could argue Scump. You could for sure argue Scump. I think, you know, my vote here, as biased as it may be, would be to Formal. I think Formal's over the 10 years span, from what Formal has done in the COD, I mean, you fast forward or you rewind 10 years, you go back to 2015 when Formal was starting to absolutely dominate Advanced Warfare and start to win. Over the next couple of years, he won everything, including champs. OpTic dominated the league. Then he went to a different team, still won over there as well with Luminosity, came back to the Huntsman, then, did pretty well that season, then went to Halo, won another world championship and is still playing at a high level to the present day and still winning all the events today. Like, that's something that it's really difficult to top. You can argue Scump and Crimsix, certainly over the 10-year span, but if you want to consider like the full legacy of the decade, Formal probably gets the nod. Now, of course, the other two are pretty interesting, Simp and Shotzzy, because Simp only came in 2019. So from a decade perspective, Scump certainly had more longevity within the decade than Simp did. And for Shotzzy, it's a very similar story, but actually Shotzzy won the world championship in 2018 on Halo before doing what he's done in COD. So I think of the kind of guys that are still competing in the COD League, I would give Shotzzy the nod over Simp for what he achieved in the last 10 years. But Formal overall would probably be my vote. So intrigued to your thoughts and all that stuff in the comment section below. Where does this go from here? Like, who's going to win it at the end of the day? Is Nadeshot going to find a way to win Personality of the Year? Or is this how it's going to go, Controller Player of the Decade? Intrigued to your thoughts and all that in the comment section below. Just the other thing here I thought was kind of interesting was the OpTic guys, they put together their Black Ops tier list. Now, a COD tier list, of course, the Treyarch games tend to rise to the top. What do you guys think about this tier list? So this is, they put together a couple of things, they made a couple of alterations. Huke was pretty happy with this version, although I think eventually they did move Black Ops 1 up slightly. So was this the final one they did? I think they moved Black Ops 1 up to the A tier. But I guess notably that all of these Treyarch games appearing in the B tier or above, certainly other games would not get that level of, gas, let's say, by the pro players. But they've got BO2, BO3 and BO4 all in the S tier. I think this is definitely justifiable. BO4 is an interesting one to me because as good as the game was, and as I played so much BO4, I thought it was sensational, great fun. From a pure fundamentally competitive perspective, with the stim shot and these other things, is it better than every COD since? Absolutely. So I think you could definitely argue that BO4 is S tier. If you want to be really harsh, maybe it's A+ tier and the other two are S tier, but intrigued to your thoughts on that. BO1 for me is clearly at least A tier. I love that game. So I do agree with what they eventually decided, which is they put it further up here, as you guys can see. Black Ops Cold War, they put in the B tier, and they've also got BO6 in the A tier. So I thought that was pretty interesting, right? I know that a lot of fans are not really a big fan of this game, Black Ops 6, but if you ask the players, they will give you a pretty good review of it. The only thing they'll say is the maps suck, which is true. So, changes need to be made on that front, I would say. And, hopefully BO7 will deliver on that front in terms of delivering some good maps. But that's what the OpTic guys put in order. I think it's probably about right. They're certainly not far off in any case, but very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.